When I was a kid, there was one freshwater fish that caught my interest. It's the Pirarucu. In my memory, back then, most people called this fish Pirarucu, but nowadays, people simply call them Arapaima. But why though? Well, perhaps the question that actually matters is it valid to simply call them Arapaima? Or is it better to call them Pirarucu? Well, let me bring up the question. What exactly is Pirarucu? Okay, so what exactly is the problem? Well, Pirarucu, as I knew it from back then, is Arapaima gigas, the giant Arapaima, or simply called Pirarucu, of course. Now, the thing is, Arapaima is not a monotypic genus. There are several species in this genus. Generally, 4 are considered valid, but some suggested there should be 5. The others are Arapaima agassizi, Arapaima mapae, and Arapaima leptosoma, the newest one, discovered 12 years ago. Oh, the 5th would be Arapaima arapaima, by the way, which, if valid, would be split from the Arapaima gigas. Funnily enough, if this species would be valid, then the most widespread Arapaima would be Arapaima arapaima, not Arapaima gigas. So yeah. Now, which one is Pirarucu? Or all of them are Pirarucu? Well, usually, Pirarucu is specifically used for Arapaima gigas. But if Arapaima arapaima is valid, then that should be the one called Pirarucu. Now, if we're talking about the origin of the word, the one used by the Tupi people, I don't think they specifically use it for a specific species. Perhaps they call all of these fishes Pirarucu. Meanwhile, IUCN assigned the Pirarucu name to the Arapaima leptosoma page, which is quite interesting because the original publication did not even call them Pirarucu. Me personally, I usually use Pirarucu for Arapaima gigas, but even though Pirarucu is the one mentioned in the title of this video, I thought, why don't I just talk about all of them while I'm at it? So here we go. Arapaima is classified in the Osteoglossiformes order. Osteoglossus means bony tongue, by the way, because they have hardened bony tongue that looks like it has teeth. Arowana is also classified in this order, so if you think they somewhat resemble Arowana, that's because they are related. They belong to a different family though. Well, the true Arowana at least. True Arowana is classified in the Familia Osteoglossidae, while Pirarucu belongs to Familia Arapaimidae. This family consists of 2 genera, Heterotis, which is African Arowana, not an arowana by the way, but that's the common name, and of course, Arapaima, which is the topic of this video. Oh, by the way, Pirarucu means redfish from the Tupi language. Apparently, Arapaima is also Tupi language, but I couldn't find what it means. If any of you speak Tupi language, please let me know what it means. They can be found throughout the Amazon River system. Oh, by the way, the Amazon River basin is large. There are many branches from the main Amazon River, which is why it can host multiple species of these large fishes. Speaking about large, let's talk about their morphology. They are one of the biggest river fish. Most adults can reach over 2 meters long and over 100 kilograms. They can even reach 3 meters. I've seen some articles claim they can grow over 4 meters long, but I'm not exactly sure about the source, so take it with a grain of salt. They are still big anyway. They have an elongated body with relatively long dorsal and anal fins, which are both located near their caudal fin. They also have a pair of pectoral fins and a pair of small pelvic fins. Like I said earlier, they have bony tongue. Their premaxilla is fixed to their skull, which means they cannot protrude their upper jaw. They cannot do this. They have large overlapping cycloid scale. Each scale is around 1 millimeter thick and 10 centimeters long. The internal structure is composed of multiple layers, with the outermost layer having the most mineral, which makes it hard and durable. Meanwhile, the mineral in the inner layer is less pronounced, which makes it somewhat flexible, harder to break basically. The stacking of these layers is oriented at around 45 to 90 degrees from each other, forming a Bullingham-type structure. This structure is also a major factor in making their scales flexible yet durable. Their color is mostly greenish-gray, but there are traces of red towards the tail. Sexually mature males have more reddish coloration. We've talked about the general characteristics. Now, let's look into the 4 or 5 species of Arapaima. But before that, okay, so usually in this kind of video, I would show you each of the species and talk about their differences, the diagnostic characters. However, it's actually quite difficult to do it in the case of Arapaima because there is actually a massive data deficient on this taxon. There is not enough data. First is the consideration of which species should be considered Arapaima and which should be considered Arapaima gigas. And then, the problem with Arapaima agassizi. The holotype, which is the original specimen used for the description of the species in the original publication, was destroyed during World War II. Arapaima mappae was known from a single holotype in 1837. Luckily, the holotype is not destroyed. Still, it is very old, so it has been deteriorating. Arapaima leptosoma was described in 2013, so it's relatively new and clear. However, to properly describe a species, you do have to compare it to its relatives, right? That means you do need to compare it to Arapaima agassizi. But remember, the only specimen we got was destroyed. So, what Professor Stewart did was, he relied on the description and illustration provided by the original author of Arapaima agassizi, which is definitely not optimal, but he did what he could. I found this infographic which combines several images and description written in Professor Stewart's publication. I'm not sure who made this specific image, but it is uploaded in several web pages. The earliest page that I could find is this post from a Chinese Facebook page, so perhaps they made this. Let me talk a bit about this. So, top left is the holotype of Arapaima gigas. This one is Arapaima mappae. The two on the bottom left is the illustration of Arapaima agassizi. Top right is the newly described Arapaima leptosoma by Professor Stewart. Bottom right is a specimen which is considered Arapaima. You could technically differentiate each of these species by these descriptions provided in this infographic. After reading some publications, the simplified diagnostic character that I could tell is Arapaima gigas has 2 rows of teeth while the others don't. Arapaima agassizi have long caudal peduncle, which makes the gap between its caudal fin and dorsal fin longer compared to others. Arapaima has way more caudal fin rays compared to the others. Arapaima leptosoma has thickened sheath covering the anterior third of its dorsal fin. For Arapaima mappae, I couldn't find a simple diagnostic character that could easily be shown with the available image. Most of it are meristic. In fact, if you use meristic, there are more diagnostic characters for each of the species, but it's not easy to show it with the images that are available. If you are interested in learning more about that, I suggest reading both of these publications by Professor Stewart. I personally would wait until the uncertainties surrounding these taxa are finally cleared. I personally don't want to jump into conclusion without even looking at the specimen. At the very least, I would wait until a dedicated research expedition to get more specimens are done. Unless you are a researcher interested in researching this, then of course, please do check it out. Oh, by the way, I did show this earlier, but yeah, all of the species are listed as data deficient in IUCN Red List. Alright, now that you know about the circumstances, let's talk about their lifestyle and behavior. As I said and implied several times, Arapaima are freshwater fishes. They typically prefer slow-moving water with many floating vegetations. When water levels are high, they migrate towards the flooded forest with higher level water. When water levels decline, they migrate towards the lower level and finally towards the lake. Arapaima are one of the fishes that need to resurface every now and then and breathe air from the surface. They have a modified swim bladder with lung-like tissue. As with many other fishes that have an upward-facing mouth, aka superior, aka supraterminal, they mostly feed near the surface. Adults mostly eat fish and crustaceans. Fries primarily consume planktons. Juveniles mainly consume insects. So yeah, basically they are opportunistic predator. Some articles also noted that they have been seen eating fruits. Their bony tongue helps them cross prey. The life cycle can be generalized into 4 stages. First, both parents make nests and guard the nest. Eggs are spawned inside the nest. This usually happens during low water level period around August to March. Fries also stay inside the nest for several weeks. After that, juveniles leave the nest, but still schooled together and protected by the parents. After 6 to 8 months, juveniles become independent. They then reach sexual maturity at around 5 years old. The native population of Pirarucu is, or at least was, considered threatened. This is due to habitat loss and, of course, overexploitation, because they are fish to be consumed. This is supported by the fact that they feed near the surface and they do need to resurface to breathe air, which makes them relatively easy to spot. This, combined with their size, make them a somewhat easy target for spearfishing. Regulations had been made and fishing restrictions had been enforced in the natural habitat, and the population is reported to be constantly increasing. However, on the other side of the world, Pirarucu is a menace. They are invasive in some Southeast Asian countries. In Indonesia, a female with mature eggs inside its body was found and published in 2020. Pirarucu is one of the most famous freshwater fish, which is why some hobbyists want to keep them as pets. In most cases, this is what led to the introduction and eventually invasion by Pirarucu. The popularity also drives Brazilian locals to cultivate and export them, which don't really help the case. This occurrence is called conservation paradox, where a species is threatened in its own natural habitat yet invasive in other places. Oh, by the way, this might be the second or perhaps even the third time I said this, but yes, it is considered data deficient in the IUCN Red List. So yeah, even though they are famous, we definitely need more research on them. Who knows, perhaps we'll discover even more species. Maybe we'll finally get another voucher specimen for Arapaima agassizi. Maybe Arapaima gigas that are typically known are not actually Arapaima gigas. I hope more people will realize how obscure it is in the scientific side, which hopefully will drive more research interest towards them. But for now, let's just learn what is known. And that's all for now. Oh, by the way, I originally did not plan to make a video about Pirarucu, but after playing Monster Hunter Wilds, I feel like it's a good time to do so. Anyway, enjoy your day.